let the offseason games begin. I'll tell you one of the key things that we're not talking about Jacksonville. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, the daily podcast where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. Reminding you also that we are free on all platforms. Wherever you get your podcast, make sure you tap in, lock in to Locked On, and like and subscribe also. Also have to let you know that today's sponsor of this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Any new folks, go ahead, don't act new, kick your shoes off, put your feet on the couch, go in the fridge whenever you want to. You are not a guest. Once you come in to Locked On Jaguars, your family. You belong just like everybody else. So make yourself at home, and we want to make sure we welcome you and let you know that we're grateful for you to be here. All right, so now that the offseason is official for the entire NFL, all of the attention, if it hasn't been already, most of the attention is going to be turned to, okay, Jacksonville, how do we make this next step? I saw a power ranking today that had the Jaguars at 6, and I had to look at it all over again because that is just not something that we are used to around these parts when the season ends. Normally, we're picking 6 or better. In the draft this year, we're picking 24th. That's a good thing. It's a nice draft. It would be a nice draft to have a top pick, but it's not something that I would want to switch to go back to being a team that's eligible for a top pick. And one of the things that we haven't spoken about a lot this offseason is this. When you think of championships and you see how clean the game was for both of those teams the other day, the Eagles and the Chiefs, in the win and the loss, respectively, you wonder where that kind of consistency and that cleanliness comes from, and how come those players are able to step up at the right moments and make those plays. It's not just talent. It's not just Andy Reid's greatness. It's not just Patrick Mahomes' greatness. It's not just Travis Kelce. There's a bigger picture than this. So what we're going to talk about is what makes that picture. The talent makes the picture, but what makes the picture crystal clear, and what gets it to the point where it's so clean that you have a photograph or you have a video like you had on Sunday when both of those teams played at a supremely high level. And I'm going to talk too about an overreaction to that game that both fans and media both make. And that's why this is not about you. This is about we, that folks make, and they do it usually with whoever's on top, and they're doing it now with the Chiefs. And I'm going to warn you not to do it. And then we'll tie it all together in segment 3 about what our wish list is. But first, I'm going to be real clear. If you haven't heard me say this before, when the Jaguars were always in search of a coach and the direction, and if you're not a Jaguar fan, you don't realize this, that's happened about 57 times in the last 12 years, okay? And I know I'm joking, not quite 57, maybe 56, but okay, not that many, maybe 10. But still, the point is when you're always and perpetually looking for this consistency, and you're looking for this sense of direction, and you're looking for how come we can't have nice things and be like other cities and other clubs, and to also simultaneously have it blamed on the fans for some idiotic reason, have it blamed on blackout that have not happened in years, almost to have it feel like they're blaming it on the city from the people on the outside. These would drive me absolutely crazy. And I've always said it came from the fact that one thing that I believe the Jaguars have always fallen short, and I hope they're not doing it again, is building the proper staff off the field. They have the right leader in Doug Peterson. I hope now what they do is give Doug Peterson more responsibility and more cachet. Now, granted, last offseason, Shad Khan had apparently said that they were going to put in for the league so that they could have a senior vice president of operations. I didn't even know you had to apply to do that. I thought you could do what you wanted to do. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, the league requires you to notify them or get their permission to do it, because what it does is take some of the responsibility away from the owner, that and the team president, and they're putting somebody else who's sort of like an answer man, right? They're giving another person the authority, almost like making another person a partner, right? And he has the authority to do things that maybe normally the owner would do or whatever. So later, Shad came back and said, you know what? I like what Doug has done the first 3 weeks. We're not adding that position. That's fine. You didn't add the position, and they had a really, really good season. I don't want them to sit here and think, okay, we're good the way we are. That's it, right? Because even though there was this great turnaround and they went 10-9 and they won a playoff game and they showed good against the Chiefs, they didn't win the playoff game. They didn't win the big one, right? They didn't win the Super Bowl. I think this is the time where you go further. That's right. You take it a step further. You are on the precipice and the doorstep of possibly being a consistent team that's going to be pushing for something. This is where I think what you need to do is get a bigger staff between the owner and the head coach. And I think there are a bunch of folks out there that Doug Peterson is familiar with and that they know. The reason why I'm attributing that to being the difference in Kansas City, we all know it's about Patrick Mahomes, right? We all do. But if you're a Jaguar fan and you say, okay, we got Trevor Lawrence and they got Patrick Mahomes, and at this point, Mahomes is the guy, right? But now you know Trevor's going to have some say. If you're Jaguar fans, you believe Trevor's going to have some say in all of this stuff and whether or not the Jags are going to be able to knock them off a little bit. Well, let me tell you what they have that we don't. They got 137 people between the coach and the owner. Now, I'm being facetious and I'm just being sarcastic when I say that. But how many names have we heard? We heard Brett Veach over the years. We've heard Borgonzi over the years. I've mentioned Mike Bradway over the years. We've seen other guys get hired and hired and hired away from the Chiefs organization. I want you guys to name anybody in our organization between Doug Peterson and Shad Khan, not named Trent Baalke. Okay, don't worry, I'll wait. What's the significance of that? Why is that significant? I'm going to tell you why it's significant, and I'm going to tie it in to this consistency and this one way of thinking that you saw in the big game the other day. And it's not just about that one game. You know what it's about? It's about the consistency we've seen them with over the years. Now, think of all of this from the standpoint of this is a team and an organization that we have to beat. This is why I'm making this point. This is a team and an organization that we have to beat with a quarterback and a coach that ain't going nowhere. So why do I believe it's super important that we also match them in other ways in order to knock them off? I'll tell you why. It's not called being a copycat, but it's about giving yourself the advantage. I'm also in segment 3 tell you why you shouldn't try to copy them on the field. Copy them off the field, not on the field. I'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you know about today's sponsor. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, man, you need help. You just need help. You need therapy. You need someone to talk to. And I'm telling you, I've been there. We've all been there. And there's a lot of times that you realize that life doesn't come with an instruction manual, right? And there are some things that knock you down when you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed, especially when you're somebody who's always at their best, right? Or like you're not showing up in the way that you want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you. And that's the key, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life throws at you. You can't do it alone. There's no better place than BetterHelp. You know why? Because it's complete online therapy from professionals, not your friend, not your buddy, professionals. And even when you're with one therapist, doesn't really work for you, BetterHelp can get you to another therapist, and you can handle your business conveniently, quietly, with a flexible and affordable, and it's an entirely online situation. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/locked-on today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on-NFL to get 10% off your first month. All right, rolling along here. We thank you once again for making us your first listen. We also continue to let you know, welcome all the new visitors into Locked On Jaguars, as well as let you know that we're free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast. So what we're talking about is post big game Super Bowl. We saw the winner, we saw the losers. Philly played a hell of a game the other day. Two well-run organizations, right? Well-run organizations, well-coached organizations. It's a game that had two teams that both had won Super Bowls within the last 5 years. So they were battling to see who was going to get that second one in that 5-year period. And it was one of the best games I've ever seen. And the one thing I noticed was, and this is ironic, until the end, there was a lack of a whole bunch of penalties, right? It was a very, very clean football game for 58 minutes. But still, even in that situation, it made me think. I could not help but watch that game, and I kept thinking about the Jaguars, like, okay, what does it take, not just for them to get here, but what does it take for them to get here and have the type of chance to win the game the way those teams did at the end? Now, I know some people say, man, you're only 2 games away. You're real close. But those 2 games are the hardest ones, bro. That's the hardest. A lot of teams get to the divisional round, but a lot of folks can't get to the Super Bowl and have a chance to win it late in the fourth quarter. Why is it important, I believe, for them to emulate this team off the field as opposed to emulating them on the field? I'll tell you why. Because Doug Peterson, much like Andy Reid, his mentor, obviously, is a very good football coach. Trevor Lawrence, much like Patrick Mahomes, is a very high-end quarterback in terms of talent. I don't think they should have an advantage if you're trying to knock them off. And the reason why they have this advantage, and here's the thing, they have a type. And what I mean by a type, they know exactly what type of player they want. They know who they are. They know whose they are. They know what they're supposed to do. They're like a computer program, and they all think alike. And where do you get those type of players in the NFL universe? You know how you identify them? You have a bunch of people with a bunch of eyes that know exactly what you're looking for, that knows what Andy wants, that knows who fits, that understands, and everybody buys in. Period. They identify. I told you they won the Super Bowl within the last 5 years, right? They had a dude named Darrell Williams that ran for 100 and some odd yards in the Super Bowl. He ain't nowhere near to be found. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was their other running back who played well. And he was on a milk carton. He ain't nowhere to be found. They got these other running backs they've identified. They don't have the same offensive line they had 3 or 4 years ago. They got a whole bunch of new people at the offensive line, but guess what they've done? They replaced them well, but they know a type. Over the last 3 years when they've drafted, right, they no longer have Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, one of the greatest receivers in the league. They changed the way that they're built in that area in the passing game. The one thing they didn't change is the fact that when they go out and draft, they draft guys that come in And just like that, they do exactly what they need to be done. And here's the thing. They all do it unselfishly. So it's not one or two people that have the responsibility of finding those guys. There's a plethora of people. There's a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people that are all looking for the same thing with different sets of eyes, and they all seem to find guys that play Kansas City Chiefs football. And here's the difference. They don't have to ingratiate them and slowly bring them around and hope that they fit in. No, you know what they're doing? Right away, those guys come in and they're adapting. Bang! You know why? Because it's who they are when they go get them. And how do they not miss on guys that they go get? Because they know what they're looking for when they leave the house. Why do they know what they're looking for? Because Andy Reid tells them what he's looking for. And the staff understands. And Mike Bradway and all of those guys. Everybody knows if a guy is Chiefs material. If you think I'm far-fetched with this, the Patriots did the same thing, but they did it differently. The Patriots did it with a skeleton staff, right? So you say, Wig, what's the difference? Why Belichick did it with a little staff and Doug Peterson and Andy Reid did it with a big staff? Why do you got to be like somebody else off the field? Because Andy Reid is more like Doug Peterson is more like Andy Reid than he is like Bill Belichick. That's why. And he probably is going to have a few differences and a couple of wrinkles here or there, but that's the difference. And I have been yelling this. If you've listened to my podcast for the last 2 years, I've been trying to get them to hire somebody from the Chiefs staff or to build their structure like the Chiefs. Do this for an exercise. I want you to go look at the Jaguars front office. I don't even know what the numbers are. I want you to look at the front office on their website. And don't just do it for the Jaguars because the Jaguars are winning. We got good karma going right now. But I want you to look at any team and look at their staff. Look at how many people they employ. Now you say, why don't other people do it? Well, because it costs money. It costs money. But they're making money over a barrel in the NFL. I think it's just, if you don't do it right, you're going to cost yourself money anyway by firing coaches and still owing the money. With the money that they've paid coaches that don't work here anymore, they could have had the more expensive staff already in place. This is what I'm not complaining. We're on a high right now for Jacksonville and for the potential of our future. But all I am saying is this: the second half against the Chargers does not matter from this point forward. It's a whole new day. And if we didn't learn anything from 2017, it's that you cannot carry over any of that stuff from the previous year. All I know is where it looks like we are right now and how I want to get to the point where there's confetti dropping down on Trevor Lawrence's long locks, right? And if we're going to maximize this thing, and I've said that from day one, when the Jaguars get Trevor Lawrence, they need to maximize everything. Be greedy about everything, right? Just be totally greedy about everything and do everything the correct way. And find a way to make sure that we give him every single thing he needs in order to win. Now, I'm going to tell you why you don't try to emulate people on the field. Because Trevor Lawrence ain't Patrick Mahomes. Totally different guys. You can do some of the things. You ain't going to be able to do all the things. And that will be what makes the Jaguars and the Jaguars experience very, very unique and not like anyone else's experience. I'll tell you about that and more in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. And I'm actually down 18 pounds. Thank you very much. If you're like me, when you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I just got the thing for you, and you got to try Built. Built, healthy, It's actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. In fact, you'll think you're doing bad, but you're not, because the macros tell you that you're not. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your local Walmart and get a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run your butt in there and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. It's Built Bar. All right, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, talking a little bit about building this staff. Do the Jaguars have enough staff? They were talking about adding. They did. I believe they did add one. In fact, I think they announced it, or they said that they were going to announce it. They tapped into the 49ers and got one of their folks to come over. I really do think that they have made a significant effort to revamp or to change the scouting staff here to fit what they're trying to do. But I want them to make sure that they are doing it to fit Doug Peterson as opposed to fitting Trent Baalke. Doug Peterson has given me hope that this team has someone in that building that understands and knows exactly what he needs to do in order to win a championship. That's because he's seen it and he's done it, and he's won a championship within the last 5 years. He knows what it looks like. He's been around Andy Reid right now, who in terms of active coaches is the godfather, right? Did you ever notice that everyone says, and they simplify it and they say that, well, the Chiefs are good because they got the best quarterback and the best coach and the best tight end ever? Everybody doesn't say that, but let's just say that enough people say that, right? Okay, if that's the case, if it's that simple, then why do they also have the biggest staff? Why do they have so many coaches? Why is the support staff so big? If you got the best coach and you got the best quarterback and you got the best tight end, nobody gonna really argue with you, right? So if that's the case, why do they need all of those extra people? Because they want to make sure that they win. When you have the absolute best, you surround him with the absolute most resources, and it's almost unstoppable. If you don't believe me, guess who started having these super, super big staffs, best facilities in the world in college football? Nick Saban did. Nick Saban has staff and former coaches and head coaches and analysts. He's got people all over the place at Alabama. You know why? Because the best, the people that want to be the best, people that want to get the best results, always seem to make sure that they have the most resources and the best resources of anybody. So I want Jacksonville to be the same way. I don't want the Jaguars to just do what we all know that I said that I don't want them to do before, and that is we got Trevor and get out of the way. No, you know what? Trevor has to go through. I want everybody to pay attention. Trevor Lawrence is going to have to go through Patrick Mahomes to win a championship, and Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, maybe, wherever he is. But you see my point? It's going to take everything. Don't go in here trying to be on an even playing field or a level playing field just on the field. You need to be off the field, because I'm going to tell you why it doesn't matter on the field. If on the field you are this and you are all of that and you are all of this, and that part is even, but off the field they have a little bit more advantage, then they're going to probably end up beating you more often than they lose. Also, in trying to go out and do your mock drafts, and this is something that I have noticed, don't overthink it. I did a poll a few weeks back, and I said, of the 4 teams left in the 2 championship games, who would you want? And folks started picking all of these guys. And they were actually picking guys saying, well, we got to match up with this player from this other team, so I'd take him. When the right answer was, well, there's like 4 first ballot Hall of Famers out there that were non-quarterbacks. You should have picked one of them. Pick the best people. That's it. Take the best folks for you. Don't be trying to build your team and mock your team. Like, for instance, don't tell me you want to draft a safety. If you want to draft a safety in the first round because he's the best player, or you think that they just need to shore up that position, fine. But please don't tell me you want to draft a safety or some linebacker that runs like the wind because he can guard Travis Kelce. Because I'm going to tell you right now, ain't no 21-year-old in the world going to stop the guy that most people think is the greatest tight end who ever lived. You're going to have a long day, and unless Ed Reed is sitting there in his prime, you need to stop thinking that you're going to draft somebody to stop Travis Kelce. You're not. What you need to do is focus on your identity, who you are. This goes back to having people in the building that understand who Doug wants to be. The more eyes, the merrier, that can find the right people that are the right fit for this football team. That's where you want to go. You want to build your identity. And even though Doug and Andy are alike, that Eagles team that won the Super Bowl didn't really look much like the Chiefs team because it had Doug's imprint and his fingerprint and his DNA on it. That's why this all centers around Doug Peterson for me and Trevor Lawrence, the coach quarterback combination. Now, when you go out and you find weapons for Trevor Lawrence, it needs to have a Doug Peterson imprint on it, because what's going to happen is this. When you build your identity, it's going to be strength versus strength. It's not going to be, we got to match Travis Kelce. It's not going to be, well, we got to make sure we have a guard who can match Chris Jones. Or we have to make sure we have a guy, or if you're trying to beat the Bengals, well, we got to make sure we draft a guy that can stop Jamar Chase. Most 9 times out of 10, you ain't going to find nobody to do that. It's like wrestling a pig in mud. No, I wrestle a pig. You just got to put him in a parking lot. I'm not going in there with. Why do you want to be exactly what? You remember a couple of years back when the Warriors were winning and the Houston Rockets, they said, okay, well, you got all these shooters. We're going to go get us some shooters. Worst idea ever. You know why? Because I don't care how many shooters you ain't going to never outshoot them. And then even if you do get guys that can shoot like them, which can't, by the way, when they had Durant, Curry, as well as Thompson, you weren't going to match it. But even if you could, hypothetically, they have been playing that way already. You think that you're going to put a team together to beat people that are already in tune with each other if you match them? No. The best way to beat a team is to build your strength up and then go strength versus strength. You're not like them. Who's going to fold? Are we going to make them play our way? Or why do you think the Bengals give the Chiefs such a hard time? They're not trying to be them. They're not trying to beat them at their game. They're just super, super talented. And they said, you know what? We're good enough that we're going to give you a hard enough time that we're probably going to beat you. We're going to make you adjust to us. That's the point. So the reason I'm bringing this up, because all of these mocks I see are not based on, sometimes I think what makes the Jaguars better and different and unique. It's based on what they have to do to stop someone else. Think about it. It's based on what they have to do to stop someone else. I bet the Chiefs didn't build their team that way. I bet the Chiefs built their team based on their head coach and what he thinks is the best way to build a team, which goes back to the entire point I've been making this whole time. Give Doug more, give him more support, get guys that can tap into his ideas, go out and find his type of guys. And all I'm saying is, in Doug, I trust. So I want what he thinks and what he feels to be the core of every decision that is made. And I want those decisions to come from people who think like him, that know exactly what he's looking for, that know what kind of ingredients he needs to cook, and they go out and they're able to find them and identify them. That's how you end up with clean games on big game Sundays. That's how you end up with team play and guys making plays and selflessness and several other people that you didn't expect to make plays, making plays. That's how it happens. That's where it starts. Not worrying about somebody else. You got to worry about yourself. Mind your own business and build yourself up, and then be able to stand on that business and go out, and no matter where you're going to play someone, tell them to line it up. Every great champion has its own identity. They're not looking and built like anyone else. And I hope the Jaguars are the same way. All right, man, make sure you tap in. It's the off season, so it's a lot of draft information that's going to be coming up a lot of free agency, which is we're going to tap into first. We're going to compile these lists. Your boy might come up with a big board this year. I never usually do it, but I think I'm going to do a little bit of it now. Until the next time we meet, make sure you guys take care of each other and tune back into Locked On Jaguars tomorrow.